Hello, my fellow humans, and welcome to another episode of the Tiger Den podcast with your host, Kyle Tiger Jarvis. I decided to do this episode sort of on the fly because it's been a hot topic lately. And so I kind of threw this together. This is just going to be sort of a quick hitter episode, but I do think that this is a really important topic. So I wanted to go ahead and get this out there. So I'm just going to jump right into it. I'm sure a lot of you are aware of the AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez dress that she wore to the Met Gala. I think it was about a week ago. I don't remember exactly what night that was, but she caused a big stir because she attended this famous event, the Met Gala, wearing a lovely white dress that had the words "Tax the Rich" painted on it in big red letters. So there's a lot to unpack here, and I think it's important to point out here at the start that "tax the rich," that phrase is in line with what AOC presented herself as in her original campaigning. This is exactly the sort of sentiment, political sentiment, that voters, people who voted for her or otherwise, people should expect from her, because this was her attitude going into her political career, that the rich needed to pay their fair share in taxes, and she was against the military-industrial corporate complex and all that. She was sort of branded as the savior of the left. And so to see her wear a dress that says "tax the rich" to a big event that's going to get a lot of coverage and that a lot of people are going to see, may seem on its surface to be in line with who she is and what her ideals are as a person and as a politician. But unfortunately, they're anything but. So let's talk about why that is. So first of all, let's look at the dress itself and the woman that designed it. Her name is Aurora James. And she is, as AOC pointed out, a woman of color. She was very proud to work with Aurora on her dress, being that they're both, women with ethnic backgrounds, heritages, and AOC wasted no opportunity to point this out. Working together, women working together. To spread a certain political message. Isn't this great? Well, yeah, in theory that would be great, except there's only a few problems. For one, the idea itself, apparently down to the style that the letters were painted on the dress, the handwriting, if you will, were stolen. Now, this hasn't been proven, but Instagram user Velvet Bandit posted the following. Mentioned how, boy, this looks awfully familiar. All of my pay stubs are hand painted, and after my "Tax the Rich" I put up in Salucito went viral on TikTok, I began selling stickers and shirts. And lo and behold, this dress bears the same likeness as my handwriting. This user goes on to say, I admire both of these women greatly, speaking of AOC and Aurora James, and I would love nothing more than to collaborate with them in some way. She goes on, I'm a full-time lunch lady and single mom, which doesn't leave me much time in the day to try to reach famous people to hit me up. So she goes on to ask her followers to tag AOC and Aurora James in posts or whatever they can do to get their attention to this matter and try to get this resolved. To my knowledge, there has not been any resolution to this, so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I don't know whether this woman potentially has a lawsuit on her hands or grounds for a lawsuit to sue Aurora James. I don't know. But allegedly there's evidence of her design on TikTok, and it had previously gone viral. Her design had gone viral there before Aurora James made this dress for AOC. So that's not a great start. When we dig deeper into Ms. James's background, we find that she's actually a tax dodger. And so tax the rich, but just not her. And so the details on this: the 37-year-old James, who reportedly has a net worth of $2 million, this is from the Washington Times, said that the, oh no, here we go. So she is, has 3 open tax warrants from 2018 to 2019 for failing to withhold almost $15,000 in income taxes from employees' paychecks. The company overall has been hit with 15 warrants in total, tax warrants, since 2015. Separately, between April 18 and April 2019, the IRS placed 6 federal liens for failing to remit more than $100,000 in employee payroll taxes. And so they talked to an expert about this. This guy, David Senadella, a college a taxation lecturer at Baruch College. I'm not sure how you say that. But at any rate, he said just because they're taking it, meaning your employer, in this case Aurora James, just because they're taking it out of your paycheck doesn't mean that they're sending it to the government. And so apparently there's $100,000 debt for her for not doing this. So tax the rich, but she's not paying her fair share into the pot. And probably pocketing it. That's the implication here. Furthermore, in October 2019, the State Workers' Compensation Board slapped her company, Aurora James's company, with a $17,000 fine for not carrying workers' comp insurance between March 2017 and February 2018. Almost a full year that she went without carrying workers' comp insurance for her employees, which is of course illegal. The company currently owes $62,722 and no payments have been received to date. So this is not looking good for Ms. James or for AOC for associating with this person that she gushed about as a shining example of women working together, powerful women, women of color working together to spread a message, and yet it turns out this message is empty as hell. So let's talk a little bit more about Ms. James. Apparently she's also a rent dodger. In August 2020, James's landlord filed papers, this is from the New York Post, to evict her company from their location at 71 Franklin Street in Brooklyn, as well as demanding more than $25,000 plus interest for staying beyond the end of their lease. The case was settled. She was sued by a previous landlord in February of 2018 for more than $5,000 in unpaid rent at her shop's old address at 209 West 38th Street in Manhattan. And she recently purchased a $1.6 million home in LA a year ago. And already the property is listed as delinquent. And she already owes $2,500 in property taxes. She's only had the place a year. There are other reports, and it's alluded to in some of these articles that I've already mentioned here, referred to here, that she exploited interns that she had working for her, unpaid interns, and essentially worked them to the bone for nothing, took advantage of them. And then when we look at the gala itself, the event itself, there's several pictures of AOC with her boyfriend, Riley something or other. I don't know much about him. I didn't look into him for this. If somebody out there would like to do that, please let me know. I'd love to know some more details on this guy and what his background is. But there's several pictures of her with her boyfriend and Aurora James, and Aurora James's boyfriend, who happens to be a gentleman by the name of Benjamin Bronfman. Now, if the name Bronfman sounds familiar to you, it's good. It should. If it doesn't, I'll explain. The Bronfman family is the notorious, infamous family behind the Seagram's fortune. And Ben's great-grandfather, Samuel Bronfman, was a really, really bad dude. As you guys know, I'm a big fan of investigative reporter Whitney Webb. She does an amazing job covering all topics, but especially Jeffrey Epstein. And in her incredible 4-part series on Epstein that was published in the Mid-Press News, she got into detail about how Epstein was not the first of his kind. There were other previous people in his position, for lack of a better term, essentially running a widespread blackmail operation that ensnared the world's most powerful figures, world leaders, heads of state, CEOs, etc. Samuel Bronfman was one of these original people who filled this role. And she goes into more, that story is incredibly deep, and I'm going to get to more Epstein episodes at a later time. But for now, it's enough to know that the Bronfman family has an extremely checkered past, and even a checkered present, as Aurora's boyfriend, Ben Bronfman, his aunt, Claire Bronfman, is currently embroiled in the Nexium sex cult scandal, or however the fuck you're supposed to pronounce that. But this is the same one that Allison Mack, the actress from Smallville, I think, and several other Hollywood people and elite folks such as Claire Bronfman have been caught up in. So when you're talking about dating a member of the Bronfman family, Ben, who's reported to have a net worth of approximately $100 million, and you yourself are worth a couple of million. You just bought a home in LA for $1.5 million. You're taking advantage of your unpaid interns and exploiting their labor. You're not paying the taxes that you owe for the employees that you have in your business. You're dodging out on your rent at not one but 2 locations. And you ripped off the idea for the dress in the first place, allegedly. But it doesn't look good. This woman's got a pretty good story. And you add all this together, and it just becomes absurd. The whole thing is absurd. Not to mention that the event itself, the Met Gala, is a $35,000 per ticket event. And so to wear a dress that says that in the first place to such an event, that particular event, is the definition of irony. And it's funny because AOC went on to spend a bunch of time defending herself after this, and literally dug into the dictionary and was arguing with people online about what the definition of irony is and whether her actions qualify, when very clearly they do. And if you say they don't, I think you need to have a long sit with yourself, because AOC is not your friend. And this type of behavior, wearing a tax the rich dress to an elitist event where tables, just a table, starts at $200,000, and she implies that her ticket was paid for, and she didn't shell out that money herself. But so far, nobody's caught to paying her way, so we have to assume she paid her own way. And it's just incredibly hypocritical. And I beg anyone out there listening to this and watching this episode that if you find yourself still looking to AOC for leadership in the Democratic Party and for the leftist movement in general, I'm sorry to tell you, but you're shit out of luck. Because she is not your ally. She is not your friend. And she is, I believe, the biggest threat to leftist progressive agendas as we speak, because you know what you're going to get from Joe Manchin. You know what you're going to get from Joe Biden. You know what you're going to get from Jeanne Shaheen and all these others that are establishment types who have been embedded in the system for years. It's no surprise when they toe the corporate military industrial complex line. But AOC was supposed to be something different. She branded herself as the heir apparent to Bernie. And she's not. And if you look at her voting record, it becomes more and more obvious that she's not. To make things even more ironic, in the context of her wearing this particular dress, she voted for the CARES Act. And, you know, a lot of you out there might feel like the CARES Act was this great thing because it put $1,200 in the pockets of a lot of Americans. And that's not a lot of money, but it's not nothing. And so you might think that this was a good thing at a time when everyday people needed that kind of financial injection. And that part was good. But they don't talk about the $30 trillion that the 1% gained as a result of the CARES Act and subsequent acts like it. And how this ended up representing the largest upward transfer of wealth in human history. Not in American history, not over the last 100 years, in human history, since the dawn of time, the largest upward transfer of wealth. And she voted for that. So, you know, when you talk about tax the rich, it's hard to take her seriously based on her actions, based on her votes, and based on this whole Aurora James situation. It's a microcosm of who she is, what her true motivations are. And it's an epidemic because she's not alone. She's not the first one to become co-opted by the machine, if in fact that's what happened. And listen, there's a very painful question there as well as to whether she was co-opted or was she a controlled psyop from the start. Either way, it doesn't really matter at this point, because what she's become since then, or at least what she very clearly is now, has left no question about who she is. And it's indicative of the larger problem within Congress. The two-party system is diseased from within. It's infected by this hunger for a sense of prestige and self-enrichment. And ideals and morals and platforms get left by the wayside in the process. And that's exactly what we're seeing with AOC. So I really want all of you to really think about it and to really look at it and say, does a congresswoman who claims to support defund the police and anti-police brutality and police accountability measures, would that person have voted for a $2 billion Capitol Police funding bill that included $720 million for the National Guard and the Department of Defense? I mean, as we speak, she's ranting on Twitter about defense spending. But she voted present for this bill, this $2 billion capital spending bill. Not nay, present. Other squad members voted nay. Ilhan Omar voted nay on that bill. AOC did not. So, you have to understand the Democratic Party holds all the power right now. They have the power to force the vote on Medicare for all, $15 minimum wage, removing marijuana from the federal drug schedule, and virtually anything else that they want to bring to the table. And they're not. And that should tell you a lot. It's more important to AOC to toe the party line and be a good little girl for Nancy Pelosi and her political party overlords. And I know that sounds like dramatic conspiracy language, but listen, at a certain point, you have to look at her actions and say, okay, well, what does this tell us? And what it tells us is she's been co-opted. And she is now controlled opposition. She doesn't give a single fuck about you or me or anyone we care about. She cares only about her own brand. A brand which she is now literally marketing, tax the rich, swag available on her website for a price, of course. So, she's turned the leftist movement into a capitalist venture for herself, and presumably for her own re-election campaign, so that she can hopefully get back into, keep her seat, so she can continue to do nothing. And to me, that's the biggest threat, because she claims to be something that she's not. Unlike a Manchin or a Biden, or, I mean, not to say that they don't lie or mislead voters about their intentions, but for the most part, they're pretty transparent in terms of their establishment nature. AOC was supposed to be the antithesis to that. And sadly, she's become something quite different. And so I'm hopeful that I can bring attention to this and that you guys will think about it. And so when it comes to vote, the next time for you to vote, whether it's for her or anyone in their position, listen, I don't know what to say other than the two-party system is dead, and both parties are diseased and infected from within. And it's really hard to believe at this point that it can be fixed from the inside. It feels like it has to be torn down from the outside and built back up by the people. And I don't know if that's via third party or what, but I know for sure that it's not by voting for people like AOC and continuing to fall for their bullshit. We got to wake up and smarten up, because we're going nowhere with people like AOC. We're spinning our wheels. And it's never going to change unless we hold them accountable by voting them out of office and refusing to vote for anyone who doesn't talk the talk, walk the walk. You got to do one, you got to do the other. And she's not. We need to hold her accountable for that. Collectively. Not just her, but everybody in the party. If we don't do that, we're going nowhere. So, I appreciate you guys tuning in for this episode. And I'm going to have a lot more on the way soon. I've got a lot of stuff that I want to cover. And so this is an important issue, though. And I hope you put some thought into it. And I know it's difficult because I know that it's easy to like her and to want to put faith in her. And, you want to believe that she is who she says she is. But the evidence screams otherwise. And everybody needs to get on board to admit this before we can make any progress whatsoever. So thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of the Tiger Den podcast. And until next time, question everything. I'll see you soon.